So we are going to be starting the fourth topic. So we're getting near the end. We're only going to be doing half of it. So we're doing slides 97 to 109 today. Please make sure you're taking notes and you're studying the vocabulary. And you can use these notes when you do the exit slip. So energy and food webs. This is probably all terminology that you are comfortable with or familiar with. So when we have a healthy ecosystem, we have producers, consumers, and decomposers. What do you already know about these categories? So in your mind, when I say the word producer and looking at this picture, what do you think they are? When I say consumer, what do you think a consumer would be? And a decomposer, why are decomposers important? So producers are plants because they're called producers. Plants are called producers because they make their own food. So in this picture here, we see, obviously these are carrots. Most of the time when you guys get carrots, they probably already have the green part cut off, but the green part is above ground and it's doing the photosynthesis. And remember, during photosynthesis, plants make glucose, and any extra glucose that they have, they store in the carrot under the ground. So basically what happens is they take the light from the sun and the carbon dioxide from the air and the water from the soil to make food. And remember that carbon dioxide enters through the leaves. The water enters through the roots, which are attached to the carrot. And the sunlight is captured in the chloroplast, which are inside the green part where the leaves are. That's why it's really important for those green parts to be above ground. They're green to capture that sunlight. A consumer is an organism that cannot make their own food. An organism that cannot make their own food are called consumers. They survive by consuming plants and animals. So this little cute little rabbit here, it eats plants. If we were talking about a lion, it eats animals. Okay, so consumers eat other things. There are three groups of consumers: herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. Before we go through, write these three down. The three groups of consumers: herbivores, omnivores, carnivores. What do you think the suffix vor means? It means to eat. V-O-R-E means to eat. All right, let's talk about an herbivore. Let's look at the prefix herb. When you see that prefix, you think of a plant, right? Herbivores eat only plants. So in human terms, we would call that a vegetarian. But in a biological world, we call that an herbivore. Okay, so when we were talking about pandas and koala bears and sheep and giraffe and cows and zebras, they are all herbivores. Herbivores get their energy from eating only plants. An omnivore is what humans are, even though you may know some humans who are vegetarian. By a generalization, or generally speaking, we would say that humans are omnivores. They have the ability to eat both plants and animals. So these are some examples of omnivores: pigs, bear, humans, lizards or reptiles, reptiles, and fish. Oh, by the way, prefix omni means many or all. Like if you're talking about the omniscient voice in language arts. Okay, omni. Next word is carnivore. The prefix carni or carne, you probably have learned in Spanish class, means meat. A carnivore is an animal that only eats other animals. And here are some examples: crocodile, bull shark, Gila monster, piranha. All those are pretty exciting to watch documentaries on. I'm sure you have. So carnivores, they only eat other animals. All right, and the last one, this is the one that we probably don't think about that much, but is really, really important. That's the decomposer. Bacteria and fungi are decomposers. You can pronounce it either way. I usually say fungi, but a lot of people say fungi. But sometimes I have that South Jersey accent, so whatever. You can pronounce it either way for me. They eat decaying matter. So that means they eat dead plants and they eat dead animals. And they do this, by doing this, they are breaking them down to help them decompose. And that's great because we don't want to have a whole bunch of things that are not rotting just laying around on our planet that could go back to the soil. So basically what's happening is that during this decomposition, the fungi and the bacteria are breaking down the nutrients and the minerals, and they are releasing them back into the soil. And this soil then helps new plants to grow. So this is really nature's way of recycling. So decomposers are super important. So when we talk about things like a compost heap, which has the same word, composer, a compost heap is doing the same thing. It's when people collect their leaves, their grass, sometimes their scraps from their kitchen, and they let it break down. And then it becomes this really, it's really awesome if you've ever done it. It's like amazing. So you have this compost bin, and then after a couple months, all of a sudden it turns into this really rich, dark soil. And it's like you basically made soil. I mean, you didn't really, but you have this soil all of a sudden. And the darker it is, the more rich it is, the more valuable it is. And that's what decomposers do. So I suggest you think about composting and look into it. But anyway, for right now, I just want you to know that decomposers are really important. They are nature's recyclers. So decomposers are an essential part of the ecosystem. When you walk in a forest, there are usually leaves and dead plants littering the ground. So for this unit, when you hear the word litter, I'm talking about dead plants and leaves, not trash litter. So in your notes, please write down litter equals dead plants, dead leaves. There are also dead animals that end up on the forest floor. We don't notice them as often, and if we do, we probably run away. But they also end up on the forest floor, and we don't want them to just sit there either. So what happens to these dead organisms? We don't see piles and piles of dead organisms all over the forest. They become decomposed by this bacteria and this fungi. Decomposers eat these dead plants and animals, and by doing so, they eliminate the buildup of dead organism. This process also recycles nutrients, and the nutrients settle back into the soil. Healthy soil supports the healthy plants that can create their own food and support the entire ecosystem. In this way, energy is constantly moving through an ecosystem from one group to another. So if we look through this is like a food web here, or an energy web, nutrient cycle. Okay, we go from producers to consumers to a secondary consumer, which basically means secondary consumer ate the primary consumer. And then if they die, if this dies, or if this dies, or if this dies, the decomposer breaks it down, and we get soil that looks like this, a nice, rich soil that goes back to the producer to grow in. All right, 26. Some animals can be called producers since they are food to other animals. That's not why they are called producers. Producers make their own food, so that is false. Producers make their own food. You might want to write that down. 27. Herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores are they producers, consumers, or decomposers? If you said consumers, you were correct. Decomposers are important because they make soil nutritious for other organisms. That is true. And that is our last one for